Hi there. I'm going to create a newspaper handout that would be suitable for a Call of Cthulhu scenario. It'll be a 1920s style newspaper, but it's flexible enough that it could go right up to 1980s, maybe even a wee bit later with some modifications. So I'll create a new file. I'm going to use A3, which isn't quite right, but it's probably the closest practical printable size, and it's easily scalable down to A4 for a handout. I have my units set to points because it makes a lot of typography stuff easy. But these are just default margins. You can see if I change that to millimeters, what it is. It's half an inch margins. So A3, equal margins all the way around. Create. I've got some wee notes here just to remind me what I'm going to cover. So first of all, we'll set up the column grid and guides, and an easy way to do that is to grab your type tool, click and drag, and I'm still holding down the left mouse button, and what I'm going to do while still holding the button down is press the right cursor key to subdivide, and what I'm going for is 8 columns, which is fairly typical for a newspaper. So once I've got that, let go. Now I don't want to use these as the actual text frames. I'm using these to set up guides more easily. And what we'll do to do that is run a script. So you can either go to File. I can't even remember where you find this. That was not there. So if you don't have this, it's under Window Menu, Utilities, Scripts. I have it over here, and what you're going to do is you're going to find the application folder, go into Samples, JavaScript, and you're looking for Add Guides. So with these 8 columns selected, I'm just going to double click on Add Guides. And what I want is I want a guide at the top of each of these. I want it on the left, the bottom, the right. I don't want horizontal centres, and I don't want vertical centres, and I want it guides around each object. So just hit OK. And now I can just delete those text frames, and I've got my basic guides set up. And just a shortcut that I use quite a lot is I hold down the Alt key and then use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. I find that a lot easier than fumbling about with Control plus and Control minus, and it tends to zoom to wherever your mouse cursor is. So I'm going to create a masthead, and for that I'll probably just go for 6 columns wide, and I'll just stick it there at the moment. So I'm going to type in helps if I spell it right. Kingsport Telegraph. Select all. Control Shift C to centre it. And I'll find a suitable font. There's one I had picked out earlier. Shortcut for making the type bigger is Control Shift and then the square bracket, the greater than, less than, or period, comma. So I'm just hitting the greater than key. And what I want to do is I want the initial capital of each to be a wee bit bigger, so I'll try 80. Maybe a wee bit bigger than that. Yep, I like that. So same for that one. 90. Select all, and then I'm just going to hit the less than, Control Shift less than, just to size that. And what I want to do here is baseline shift this up, just so that it might fit well into that space, just to tighten it up a bit. So that was 14 points. I'll apply the same baseline shift to this, 14. I place the cursor between the K and the I, and I'm just going to adjust the kerning just ever so slightly. Place the cursor between T and E, and I'm going to adjust this one a lot more, just to visually it looks neat. Right, so I think that would do for that. Now you notice when I line up the text frame with the top guide, there's a lot of space, so what I'm just going to do is hit the up arrow. I think that looks okay. Select all again, swatches, switch to the stroke and give it a white stroke, which you can't see at the moment. Now I'm selecting the direct selection tool, selecting the text frame, type it, no, object, I'm looking for effects, drop shadow. So we want a drop shadow, we want the opacity to be 100, we want 0 offset, and we want to turn the spread up to 100. So this is effectively giving us a second outline, and I maybe want that to be 2 point. And what I'll now do is select the type again, stroke, and I'll try bumping that up to 2 point, a 2 point white stroke. So I quite like the look of that. To duplicate this, I'm going to hold down the Alt key with the main selection tool. Hold down the Alt key. I'm going to click and drag, and then I'm going to add the Shift key to constrain it vertically. I'm going to delete that. select all, reset the baseline shift to 0, and I'm going to add a sort of secondary title. The newspaper I used to work for was called the Greenock Telegraph, but historically it used to be called the Greenock Telegraph and Clyde Shipping Gazette. So I quite like the thought of a coastal newspaper in New England having a kind of subtitle like that as well. So I'm going to type in and main bay shipping gazette. So a shipping gazette would be, as part of the newspaper, it would have a list of cargo ships and things, you know, that had entered ports, were loading up, were leaving. It would have the destinations and what they were carrying. So that'll be a lot smaller. So again, Control Shift and the less than key. That's fine. And obviously I need to spell bay correctly. So we have our masthead now. What I might do is just marquee select both of those and Control G to group them. Now this CC Libraries thing is something I'll mention a wee bit later, but what you can do if you're creating something like this is, say I've grouped those two together, you can just drag that into a CC library. You can create your own CC library, and it means in future if you're creating a different newspaper, you can just drag that and you've got a sort of library of useful elements that for reusing. Right, so we have the masthead. I'm going to do the dateline next. So first of all, hold shift, drag out a rule, stroke 2 point. I can see that that's white. I haven't set up I should have set my default stroke to be black, but not to worry. Swatches, stroke, black. Don't use registration, use black. I'm going to position that there. I'm holding down Alt, dragging to create a copy. New text frame. So that's the first part of that line, and I want a number of pages and a price over to this side. So what I can do is just hold down shift and hit tab, and I get 5 cents, and say it's got 24 pages. I'm going to leave Minion Pro. I'm going to leave as the kind of default type for this. It's a fairly reasonable serif typeface. I might want to make it bold, and I might want to bump it up just a tiny bit. That's fine. If I want to preview that, I hold down, press the W key. Now these areas here on a lot of newspapers are used by adverts. They're known as lugs because they're like ears on either side of the masthead. I'll address that later. Right, so we'll go for the main story first. So we need a headline. Bold. So again, Control Shift and the greater than less than keys to bump that up. Now you will notice if your leading is on auto, for things like headlines it can be, that's way too much space in between them. So select everything and I'll just reduce that till I think it looks tight enough. And with that text frame selected, Control Shift C to centre. Now, I'm going to have more than one story under this kind of master headline. So I'm just going to duplicate that down. Change it to 3 columns. Better make it smaller first. Period newspapers like this quite often had subheadings. They could have more than one, and they varied in style. Sometimes there were caps and lowercase, sometimes they're all caps. So I want a new line here, so I'm going to hold down Shift Return and then I'm going to do Shift Tab because I want it pushed over. Now if I was typesetting something for myself or a scenario, I probably, I wouldn't have all these words capitalised like this unless appropriate, but you're reproducing an old-fashioned newspaper and a lot of these kind of modern style things would just go right out the window. And I might also make that a bold italic. That's fine. And keeping all these elements as separate text frames gives you more flexibility for rearranging stuff. So we've got the main headline, a subheading, and we want another one, a 2-column one. It will be double reef. So Shift Return, Shift Tab. This can be a bit bigger. give this a kind of sub heading, if you like. US Navy refused to comment. Oh, fumbled it. Again, Control Shift greater than and less than. That's fine. Careful you don't. If you're trying to resize some, just be careful you don't rotate it by mistake. So I'm going to Control D. I've prepared a couple of text documents to simulate, you know, if you were using this for a scenario, you would be writing out the text obviously, and you would have a word count. So I'm simulating having a 500 word story and a 270 word story, so I can show you how you would sort of fit it. The text, I'm just going to open that place. The text I'm using, just to save me, I didn't want to use lorem ipsum placeholder text for everything. So it's just a slab copied and pasted out of the Innsmouth story by H.P. Lovecraft. So it'll be a single column first of all. I don't know what that garbage there is, but we'll just put in a dash. Right, so I'm setting it to 8 point first of all, select everything, paragraph, and I'm just going to change it to justified with left aligned last line. Hyphenations on. Now I need 3 columns for this. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, drag, hold down the Alt key, drag. Then I'm going to select everything there, delete, select everything there, delete. And then I'm going to click on the first one, click on that wee red plus symbol and link it into the second one, and then click there and link it into the third one. So to balance these 3 columns, I would just start by dragging that up. So there's 3 lines over, so if I just extend that down 1 line, extend that down 1 line, We're nearly there. This is where you would actually probably copy fit. It's what sub-editors would do. You know, you would remove words or remove lines, or balance it some other way. You know, you could add a line, you could add words, just to get it nicely balanced. One thing I'm going to do, I don't know what these garbage characters are. Obviously the text I copied and pasted this from had some garbage characters. So, right, so fixing that stuff's fixed it. But anyway, select all, paragraph, sentence here, and we're going for first line indent. And we're going to indent it. You could, if you're using 8-point type, you could indent it 8 points, but I'm just going to indent just a little more. And this denotes separation of paragraphs. You don't use paragraph spacing and indents. Choose one or the other. And for these this era, it would be fully justified type with no space in between paragraphs. The first paragraph wouldn't have an indent typically, but some newspapers do, you know. So again, it's just a case of continue to balance it. Now that's one line extra. See if there's anything else I can change. Now what I'm going to do is just leave it like that, and then with the last column, select it, press Ctrl B, vertical justification. I'm just going to say justify, and it's just going to put a tiny wee bit extra leading in there to balance that. Same again, I'm going to do Ctrl B, I'll select the smaller story that I had. I'm going to select all, and I'm going to get the eyedropper tool and just click there to copy that style. Click there, draw a text right. Again, Control B. Now you can put in a byline which could be the name of the reporter or the writer. You could put in a date at the top of each story if you want. I'm going to copy that over. I'm going to do fill with placeholder text here just to get something different. Don't know why that's doing that. That's it. Now to separate stories, I'm going to draw in a rule in the centre of the gutter between columns. Pop it right in the middle and make it half point for these, black. So that separates these two sub-stories. I'll hold down Alt, click drag. And for this one, because this is a separate, this has nothing to do with the Raider and Innsmouth, I'll make it heavier, maybe 2 point. Hold down Alt, and now I'm going to rotate. Hold down Shift to snap to 90 degrees. So I'm going to draw that in there. And that effectively separates this story from the main headline. Now you would just, obviously you would need to come up with filler stories to fill, you know. Pictures, right. If I open up Photoshop quickly, I've got a couple of pictures. Let's get a picture of a submarine. I've got a picture of a policeman or whatever. I'm going to change it to grayscale if it isn't already. I'm going to then change it to bitmap. Make sure that says halftone screen. Hit OK. Just leave the defaults. So you can see what it's done is it's given it a halftone screen like an old newspaper. Do the same with this one. Bitmap. Control Z that. Don't know why that's insane dots per inch. Right, so I'm going to change this to 150, and then I'm going to try that again. That'll do. Now you would save these, you would change it back to grayscale. You would save them and you would drop them in, but I'm lazy. I'm just going to copy that, paste, copy that, paste, select both of those, give them a black stroke, change the stroke to 1 point's fine. Resize an image, hold down Control Shift and drag. Control Shift, drag. You could have a caption line beneath these if you wanted, but I can't be bothered. Adverts. Basically find an old newspaper and just recreate some of the adverts, changing the town name, the name of the business or whatever. There's nothing to them. I mean, if I open up my CC libraries, there's some I created yesterday. So just drag. already got that one. Now, I mean, it'd probably be better to have a different size for these, but again, I can't be bothered at the moment. So I'm just going to pop these in. There used to be a joke when I was working in newspapers that editorial was just what was used to fill space that they couldn't sell adverts for. If you are doing a front page and you are having adverts on it, they would typically be in these lug positions and positioned on the right hand side of the front page, you know, not in the gutter, you know, not over here. Right, so let's have a think about this. Just going to edit that a wee bit. I mean, there's no real magic to this. You're just throwing them in and moving them about to fill the space appropriately. We would obviously need either some more adverts or some more stories here. I would be sort of too precious about these things because at the end of the day, these people were literally cutting and pasting stuff with scalpels and moving things about. And some of these ads, you know, they'd be printed onto film, you know, shiny paper. They'd be put through a wax machine that coated the back with sticky wax, and they'd be pasted onto, you know, the galley proof of the page. Now, if this was a weekly newspaper, the next week this exact same advert might be going in, so they would just peel it off of last week's galley proof and paste it onto this week's until they became really tatty and they had to have another one output. Typically the older back you go in time, the more columns you would have in a newspaper, the less pictures, and the more it would just be a dense wall of text. I think we'll take another wee copy of that ad. And just because I'm feeling a wee bit lazy, I'm just going to hold down Alt and I'm just going to stretch that, because they used to do shit like that. So that's basically it. Get your column guides sorted first. Get your masthead done. The other bits of the page furniture, like the dateline and stuff. Concentrate on your big stories that I assume are relevant to your campaign or your scenario, and then you're just filling space. That's what they do in reality as well. If you've got a hole, throw an advert in. If you don't have an advert, in reality as well, if they couldn't sell an advert on the front page and they had a space, they would stick in a house advert, just an advert for some aspect of the newspaper itself. If you were doing a slightly later period of newspaper, it would be very similar to this, right into the 80s and even the early 90s. That, you know, most of them were still printed in black and white. Pictures were black and white. What you might have is one spot colour, which would be, to simulate that, it would just one colour. You would use one colour anywhere. Pictures would still be black and white. They wouldn't use colour, you know, in any of these stories or rules or anything like that. But you might find a bit of the spot colour in adverts. You know, so you might have something like that, but that would be it. You know, well into the even the mid-90s, if I'm honest. Then when a lot of them switched to full colour presses, you know, the whole game changed and everything's out the window. But hopefully that's been helpful. Obviously after that, save it, export it as a PDF or a JPEG or whatever, print it. If you get any questions, feel free to comment or look me up on Facebook or whatever. Cheers, thanks.